as we get to this sort of stage, you're going to carry on rotating. Now, what's important, in my opinion, is that you don't post up over this left-hand side because you're going to get stuck. You have to keep feeling like you're pulling this lead hip back. Now, as I keep pulling this lead hip back, my right hip, as I mentioned earlier now, because it's no longer got any pressure on it, is going to start coming forward. This is why you end up kind of seeing the professionals with a huge amount of connection between the right elbow and the right hip. Now, if you'd managed to create a shallowing, right, you're going to be in a position that looks like so. If you kind of had to come more down a single axis, you might look a little bit kind of indifferent, right, in terms of the relationship of the lag. The reality is now, as you start to kind of straighten this leg, right, so you're going to start firing your glutes, which means this leg is going to start straightening. It allows, as I've mentioned before in the impact video, it allows the thigh to end up being more forward facing, because to be honest, if you try and execute a golf swing against a square leg, you're only going to get so far in rotation. The reason why we see the pros really move this way is because basically they need to be forward facing towards the target, and that's why this leg will have to create a straightening. The thing in the golf swing, right, and when I start hitting a few shots, I've got a couple of tools which I think are useful, is that you have to time this with a release as well. So a rotational movement is going to be faster, okay, rather than creating a huge lateral movement. So rotation is kind of working at a constant speed, but you still have to time the club face and the hit. Now, I will start to actually square up the club face, and basically what happens, if I kind of whiz back through the movements again, you'll swing up to the top, you'll separate, right? As you kind of keep bringing the arm down, at this stage, once you get to the left arm horizontal, the shaft at the moment is pointing down towards the ground. It will start to change its direction. So you can see the way now it's pointing more towards the target. Now, roughly by the time you get to this position, you're going to have to down cock the club, right? And that basically means it's what's known as an ulnar deviation, which is like your casting sort of motion. And you'll have to do a casting motion with a degree of rotation around that left forearm as well to be able to get the club face square at impact. You have to do it unless you have a very strong grip. Even if you create flexion, I've talked about it before, you still have to create an element of down cocking to get the club on the back of the ball. So what you need to kind of do is that as you start to create this straightening, you have to understand that at the same time you have to allow the club to release down towards the back of the ball. And that's something that's important to understand, because without that, and if you start pulling this back, you're going to start to feel like if you're holding onto this angle, you're going to get lost. You have to allow the club to release as you swing through. Then it just comes towards the finish position. Basically, if you get the whole sequence of events correct, what you'll start to notice is that, as you can see, my thigh is now pointing towards the target, my hips are pointing towards the target, and the shoulders are as well.